Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning here, Calgary, Alberta, March 31st. This is one child abuse survivor to another, and I'm just having some coffee, waking up, and my voice I have like a sore throat, so I'll do my best here to speak clearly and so you can hear what I'm saying. And I appreciate you being here for 15 minutes. This is a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And we're talking about understanding crisis. It's an article I found at Child Welfare Information Gateway, and that is www.childwelfare.gov. And you can pull this article up yourself. You just have to go onto that website and look under the letter C, scroll down, and pull up the publication under crisis. It's called Understanding Crisis. And so we're looking at that. We've been looking at it for a couple weeks now. And yesterday we were looking at, these are special circumstances where, it's called Understanding Special Family Situations, where CPS might go into a home if there's been abuse reported, and Child Protection Services goes in, and they have to make an assessment. They have to try to help these families problem solve and get the families to learn how to problem solve and to learn how to cope and really so that the abuse will stop and that the family can stay together. That's the whole idea. This is sort of the best case scenario type stuff that we've been looking at here in this article. And it's quite interesting, I think, because, our family experienced an intervention and Child Protection Services or whichever one came in. I was really young at the time, so I don't remember, but I remember the social workers coming around with clipboards and stuff, and I remember a couple of sort of episodes. So, it's just quite interesting. I think my siblings who are older, who would be able to talk to me about it now are gone, so they're passed on. So it's unfortunate because I would really like to talk to somebody who had some answers and who could really fill me in on what happened. And it's too bad they're all gone, and my sister doesn't remember a whole lot about it. She was 5, let's see, how old would she have been? 7 years old, so she has a few memories of going to a couple of counseling sessions, and that's it, because that's all my parents went to, and they didn't follow through what they were supposed to do, and we remained in the home, and so the abuse continued. And so I'm all for child protection agencies to go in and help stop abuse of children. I really wish that they would have kept on coming into our home and made it better for us, but obviously our parents were pretty good at getting everything smooth through the cracks. So there you go. That's what happens. So we're looking at spouse abuse today and also mental illness. These are special situations where CPS crisis workers would have to really take a good look when they go into the home. Is there substance abuse? Is there spouse abuse? Is there mental issues? And these are things that they have to really take special note of. So this is not a professional show. I don't have any professional counseling certificates or therapist certificates. I just do Blog Talk Radio shows because I'm a survivor of child abuse, and I fight for child rights. I study human rights and child rights, and I thought, hey, there's not, I just want to add my voice to all those voices out there already who are speaking out against abuse, right? And I thought, okay, there's not enough people doing it. I'll just get involved. Everyone should get involved and raise their voice, no matter what way they can. It's so important that we all get involved to make these changes, because children are dying at the hands of their caregivers and parents every day. And not only that, but that's just the ones being reported. Others are getting murdered by their parents and caregivers and just buried somewhere, and we never even hear about them until 20, 30 years later when they dig up the body. Unfortunate, sad, but it's true, and we have to make some changes. We really do, for these children today and for tomorrow and the next generation. So that's why I'm doing this Blog Talk Radio show. And the stuff, I do talk a lot about my own stuff, but that's just to give people an idea of what a real survivor kind of goes through, because not very many people, not very many survivors are comfortable talking about their stuff. And I thought, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway. I don't care how uncomfortable it really is. People need to hear about it, and people need to know the truth. And if we're ever going to make any changes, we all have to start speaking up. So, this is, like I said, not a professional show. Listen at your own discretion. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, please listen with an adult or someone who is, a mentor, a coach, counselor, a teacher, a parent. I really hope you have a parent who cares enough about what you're doing online, because I believe in online safety for children. We can't stress it enough. I think that there's so many crazy people out there trying to get a hold of children, and especially online sexual predators and whatnot. So you have to be really careful what you're listening to. Make sure you have a parent or someone who cares. Listen and to what you're listening to, and check out what you're doing online so that you can keep yourself safe. It's really important, and you'd be doing me a favor and yourself a favor if you went and did that. And you can always listen to my shows with an adult, and they can help you to make the decision on whether or not you should be listening to the show, right? So important. So we'll get right into this article. It's called Spouse Abuse. As spouse abuse is increasingly being identified in families who abuse and neglect their children and has great emotional impact on the children, crisis workers need to screen for domestic violence, possibly using an inventory. Crisis workers must be aware of possible indicators of spousal abuse and skillful in determining the level of risk that a batterer may present to family members. This must be done in a way that does not escalate the risk of violence to others and children. Mothers and children are often fearful of disclosing abuse in the presence of the abuser for fear of retaliation, and that could go for fathers too. We know that women can abuse too. Men can be abused, and it's really sad. Everybody just needs to stop treating each other badly. I just can't believe how terrible people are to their own families, and I've seen so much of it. It's just unbelievable. Excuse me. My voice is just terrible today. I woke up with a sore throat, and I thought, oh boy, well, I'm going to do the show anyway. Likewise, confronting an abuser with allegations and statements from family members will increase the risk of harm. So confronting the abuser with allegations and statements, it says, from family members will increase the risk of harm, absolutely, because they say, oh, well, your son told me this, or your wife told me that, or your husband told me that, and then the abuser gets more upset, and then after they go home, the risk of abuse is a lot higher, right? It says, it is important to recognize that battering is not only about violent assault, but also involves a host of actions in which the batterer establishes increasing levels of power and control over the victim. It must be understood that in many, if not most circumstances, battered women do not feel that that they can just leave. Their concerns are supported by some data that indicate that the potential for lethality increases when a woman tries to leave. Understanding the true level of danger is an essential part of intervention. Access to weapons, substance abuse, mental illness, threats of homicide or suicide, and the patterns and the severity of the abuse itself are all key considerations. The needs of children in violent households are primary consideration, and assessment should examine the effects of violence on them. Children who witness battering may exhibit a variety of symptomatic behaviors, from aggression to fearfulness, depending upon the age and sex of the child, the presence of child abuse and neglect, and other family experiences and characteristics. Crisis response considerations must focus on safety first for both the mother and her children, or even the father and her children, or his children. A successful plan for their safety should be developed jointly with the mother and should consider her concerns, her experiences, and her resources. And that goes for the same for the father, too, if it's the mother who's abusing everyone. Treatment should likewise support ongoing safety for mother and children and may involve the use of shelter services, legal intervention, and counseling services, as well as batterers treatment programs for perpetrators. And that would go for men, too, if the wife was the abuser, right? Recent innovative work has demonstrated that intervention can achieve safety for mothers and fathers and children, if whoever's being abused, without placing the children away from their mothers or fathers. Additional support services should include safe visitation arrangements, advocacy, and assistance in ensuring adequate housing, health care, and employment. Excuse me. So that's quite interesting. Like in our home, that's exactly what happened. There was. Both my parents were accusing each other of being the abuser, right? Like my mom said it was my dad said it was my mom, and actually it was both of them. And they were both abusing the children and all of us, and they were both actually battering each other. It wasn't just a one-way street in our house. I know that in many cases it is, and there's so many cases where it's just the wife who is being abused and the children, and then there's many cases where it's just the husband who's being abused, and actually there is, and you'd have to check it out, but there's tons and tons of cases of that, where there, male abuse against men, right? And it's just as wrong. And so, but I know, like in our case, my parents, they used to fight, and my mom used to batter my dad used to batter my mom, and then they would both batter the kids. So it was just terrible. Everybody was just, I'm sorry, but everybody was just battering everybody, and even the siblings, because there was no one came together. A few of my siblings used to try to stand up for each other and also for myself, but when you grow up in a family that's against each other all the time, even the siblings go kind of against each other because everybody's playing for to stay on the right side of the parents. So everybody's kind of, not looking out for each other, sort of thing. It's kind of like, well, I'm going to keep myself safe, so I'm going to tell on so-and-so, and that way they get in trouble, and then I won't get in trouble. And, it's just it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And this can happen. We know it does, and in lots of families. And so, this is what the CPS has to do when they go in there, is make sure, really take a good look and screen for domestic violence, like they said. And, they have to be aware of possible indicators of spousal abuse and the fact that there could be serious risks to the children because of this spousal abuse. And I've done lots of shows on domestic violence and domestic abuse and stuff. It's so important because I was a secondhand victim of domestic abuse, right? So I know what it's like to grow up in a home where parents are throwing things across the room, cursing each other, and never getting along. My parents didn't fight, 24 hours a day, but there was always an air of tension in the air, and you never knew when they were going to explode at each other, even out in public, at grocery stores or, in restaurants. If we didn't go out to eat as a family very often, but once in a while my parents would go out to eat and they'd take me, and you just never knew, like, what was going to happen on the car ride home. It was very upsetting and very scary to see that all the time. And after a while, you become sort of numb to it, and you grow up in that sort of situation year after year after year. Nothing changes. Pretty soon, you take on an attitude of, a lot of anger developed in my heart, a lot of hatred and for what they were doing to each other and to us. And they never got any help, and that's what bothered me. They didn't care enough to bother to go and get help. And even today, like, if they were both sitting here and I told them that, they would still deny the whole thing, and they would just blame it on each other, because that's how they were. My mom would blame my dad would blame my mom. They'd never come together to just say, look, we both made a mistake, we both should have got help. They won't admit their mistake. And that's the way abusers are, right? Because they obviously have some mental issues or whatever, emotional problems, and unless they get some help, they're not going to want to admit that they caused their family to be destroyed, right? And they were the main cause of the destruction of their family. And so this is what's really sad. It happens in a lot of families, I know, and everybody needs to keep reaching out and get some help, and so that we don't repeat this stuff in our adult life, in our adult lives with our own children and with people in our lives, our husbands or wives or whatever, right? So important to get help so that we don't recreate that mess that we grew up in, right? We'll look at tomorrow night. I'll be on tonight too, 9:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, for child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. And then tomorrow morning we're going to still continue with the Survivor to Thriver workbook tonight. And then tomorrow morning we're going to look again at 5:30, same time, one child abuse survivor to another. We're going to look at mental illness as the next part of this this actual document here, this publication, and dual diagnosis, poverty, and then the summary of this part, and termination and follow-up services. So we'll look at all that tomorrow morning. So you guys have a great day. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them and just to promote awareness, education, prevention of child abuse. You can go on their website, www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. They're a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, all volunteers, and all just working 24/7 to stop child abuse, and I sure hope you'll join us. And that website is awesome. You can get some great information there on how to report child abuse, signs and symptoms, what to look for, what to do if a child actually comes to you and discloses that they're being abused. So important, because if you don't report it properly, you can ruin a case for a child. And we could save a child's life literally by becoming educated and aware of the signs and symptoms of child abuse, and also how to report it properly, and what that we do need to report it. You can't just say, "Oh, I might break up a happy home." Abused children are not happy, let me tell you, and their lives are in danger. So we could save a child's life by becoming educated and just aware of child abuse. It is happening. It's happening all over the world. It's an epidemic, and it's a real problem. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. And I just hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you tonight. And until then, bye-bye.